Hello, everybody. My precious grandkids and nieces and anybody else out there that's reading through the Bible with us to discover who the courageous men and women were in the Bible. So we just finished up the book of Ruth, and she was so courageous, wasn't she, to leave her family, her home, her culture, and go to a foreign land with her mother-in-law. And she was so obedient. I'm sure she never dreamed she would marry Boaz and become the great-grandmother of King David, which is in the lineage of Jesus. So, sometimes we just got to be courageous. Even though we don't know what the result's going to be, God will bless you when you obey Him, won't He? So we are starting a brand new person who's courageous, and it's in 1 Samuel 1. So find that place in your Bible: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Joshua, Judges, Ruth, 1 Samuel. And this is a woman as well. So let's start in chapter 1, verse 1. There was a man named Elkanah who lived in Ramah in the region of Zuph, in the hill country of Ephraim. He was the son of Jehoram, son of Elihu, son of Tohu, son of Zuph of Ephraim. It's kind of fun. The names are so different than ours, aren't they? Elkanah had two wives, Hannah and Peninnah. Peninnah had children, but Hannah did not. Each year, Elkanah would travel to Shiloh to worship and sacrifice to the Lord of heaven's armies at the tabernacle. The priests of the Lord at that time were the two sons of Eli, Hophni and Phinehas. Verse 4. On the days Elkanah presented his sacrifice, he would give portions of the meat to Peninnah and each of her children, and though he loved Hannah, he would give her only one choice portion, because the Lord had given her no children. So Peninnah would taunt Hannah. She would make fun of her because the Lord had kept her from having children. Year after year it was the same. Peninnah would taunt Hannah as they went to the tabernacle, and each time Hannah would be reduced to tears and would not even eat. "Why are you crying, Hannah?" Elkanah would ask. "Why aren't you eating? Why be so downhearted just because you have no children? You have me. Isn't that better than having 10 sons?" I think she still wanted to have a son, didn't she? It's very special to have children, and she was very sad. In verse 9, once, after a sacrificial meal at Shiloh, Hannah got up and went to pray. Eli the priest was sitting at his customary place beside the entrance of the tabernacle. Hannah was in deep anguish, crying bitterly as she prayed to the Lord, and she made this vow: "O Lord of heaven's armies, if you will look upon my sorrow and answer my prayer and give me a son, then I will give him back to you. He will be yours for his entire lifetime, and as a sign that he has been dedicated to the Lord, his hair will never be cut." As she was praying to the Lord, Eli watched her. Seeing her lips moving, but hearing no sound, he thought she had been drinking. "Must you come here drunk?" he demanded. "Throw away your wine." "Oh, no, sir," she replied. "I haven't been drinking wine or anything stronger, but I'm very discouraged, and I was pouring out my heart to the Lord. Don't think I'm a wicked woman, for I have been praying out of great anguish and sorrow." "In that case," Eli said, "go in peace. May the God of Israel grant the request you have asked him." "Thank you, sir," she exclaimed. Then she went back and began to eat again, and she was no longer sad. So Hannah was very courageous in that she exposed herself. She was vulnerable. She cried out to the Lord. She didn't hold back her true feelings, and she let the Lord know what her heart was. And when Eli the priest heard her, he scolded her, and she was courageous to speak to him and to tell him what her heart's cry was. And because she was courageous, then Eli understood, and he knew in his heart from God that she would have a son. He prayed that she would have a son. And so she went home, and she was no longer sad. She gave it to the Lord. She gave her request to the Lord, and she believed she would have a son. So in verse, let's go down to verse 19. The Lord remembered her plea right before verse 20. The Lord remembered her plea, and in due time she gave birth to a son. She named him Samuel, for she said, I asked the Lord for him. The next year, Elkanah and his family went on their annual trip to offer a sacrifice to the Lord, but Hannah did not go. She told her husband, wait until the boy is weaned. Then I will take him to the tabernacle and leave him there with the Lord permanently. Whatever you think is best, Elkanah agreed. Stay here for now. May the Lord help you keep your promise. So she stayed home and nursed the boy until he was weaned. So Hannah was very courageous in that she remembered what she had told God that she would do. And she also knew that the time was coming, but she had a plan to keep the boy until he was weaned and he no longer needed her physically. I mean, he would need his mom. That just didn't sound right. It's such a strange story. But obviously, God put that desire on her heart, and it went along with what God's plan was to bring Samuel into the world. So when the child was weaned, look in verse 24 what happens. Do you think she'll go through with it? That would be really hard, wouldn't it? Really hard. I can't even imagine how hard that would be. Hannah took him to the tabernacle in Shiloh. They brought along a 3-year-old bull for the sacrifice, a basket of flour, and some wine. After sacrificing the bull, they brought the boy to Eli. Sir, do you remember me? Hannah asked. I am the woman who stood here several years ago praying to the Lord. I asked the Lord to give me this boy, and he has granted my request. Now I am giving him to the Lord, and he will belong to the Lord his whole life. And they worshiped the Lord there. She worshiped the Lord. And if you look in chapter 2, it is her song. It is her prayer. And we'll look at that next time, tomorrow. But Hannah was very courageous to pray such a thing and to be willing to follow through on it. And we know for sure that God will have his hand on Samuel, won't he? So she has taken him, and instead of crying and being sad, she worships the Lord, because giving him to the Lord, she knows that Samuel will grow to be a great man of God. So anytime God asks you to do something that's a difficult thing, we want to do it. But sometimes we have something on our heart that we ask God. And if we tell God we're going to do something, then we want to be courageous and do what we told him we would do too, don't we? Anyway, so that is the story. Do you remember what her name was? Hannah. Okay, we'll finish with her story tomorrow, and then, of course, we're going to find out what happens to Samuel and if he grows into being a courageous boy and man. Okay, love you. Bye.